In today's video, we're taking a look at the latest offseason trade rumors and unrestricted free agent rumors. We're looking at teams at the Calgary Flames, Nashville Predators, New York Islanders, Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Vegas Golden Knights. We have several injury updates and another key prospect signing as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. First up, I just want to wish everybody a happy Easter. Everybody out there who celebrates, I hope you're having a great day and have had a great Easter weekend. We had some news that came out a little bit yesterday. Of course, yesterday's video was a top 20 prospects video. Of course, we didn't get into a lot of news yesterday because there wasn't a lot going on. So we're going to incorporate a little bit of the few things that came out into today's video as well. The San Jose Sharks have announced they've signed one of their top prospects, Thomas Bordeleau, to his 3-year entry-level contract. Actually, he was playing in his first game today, and before this video was even recorded, he already had his first assist recorded. So first game, first point for Bordeleau, who certainly could be a big part of the team's future. Another prospect coming through the University of Michigan program. Of course, he, along with a guy like William Eklund, will be big parts of the Sharks' future as they start to take the next steps here and incorporate more youth into that lineup. They certainly have a ways to go, I think, before they'll be a little bit more competitive and can get back into the playoff contention and consideration, but Bordeleau could be a big piece of that. So nice to see him make the jump from college hockey to the NHL. Of course, we had several injury updates. Of course, we mentioned a few days ago, Penguins goalie Tristan Jarry was injured. They weren't quite sure the full extent of it. Right now, they're calling it week to week, but there is some concern that he could be out like more than a week. We're looking at possibly a couple of weeks here, which pretty well could take us to the end of the regular season. I would have to think that it's a little early yet, but there's probably some at least minor concern that he wouldn't be able to go for the beginning of the playoffs. I mean, we can't confirm that yet. That's just, my theory based on the timing that they've given. But I would think that the organization would have, some concerns that way. I'm not sure how they feel about Casey DeSmith getting a starting role to start the playoffs, so I'm sure they're hoping Jarry to be ready to go. I know last year in the playoffs was not a good outcome for Tristan Jarry, and it was certainly hoping for better results this year. And of course, the Penguins are a team we're going to talk about a little bit further in the video because they do have a lot of players that they have to have decisions made on, a lot of question marks going into the offseason and preparing for the future. So Tristan Jarry in the goaltending situation in Pittsburgh could certainly be one of those topics we'll have to look at here. Canucks captain Bo Horvat appears to be done for the season after blocking a shot. Looks like his injury is significant enough that he's probably done for at least a couple of weeks, which is going to, again, take you to the end of the regular season here. So unfortunately, the Vancouver push for the playoffs, which at this point isn't completely ruled out. It's not completely unrealistic. It is still theoretically, mathematically possible as I record this, but as each day goes by, they get a little bit closer to being eliminated. The dream comes a little bit closer to crashing, but they've certainly done it way, way better under head coach Bruce Boudreau. Lots to like about the second half of the season for Vancouver. They certainly have some question marks and some decisions to make. That of course, Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford are bound to make some changes. How extensive, we're not sure. There's been a lot of rumors around that roster and what might happen as well. And we'll certainly see where things go on that front. But for right now, Captain Horvat is likely done for the year. The Rangers are not expecting Tyler Mott to be back for the rest of the regular season either, which is certainly a blow for them. After acquiring Mott from Vancouver at the NHL trade deadline, it's unfortunate he won't get more of a chance to play in the lineup before the playoffs, because I know him, along with Andrew Kopp and a couple other minor moves that they've made here, certainly are proven to be hopefully enough to get them through. Not just get into playoffs, but get through a round or two, as I'm sure that the team's hope. I know Vertrano was a big addition there as well. Clearly, the Rangers are a team that are going to be contending for, the top 3 spots. I don't see them slipping to a wild card. It's just debatable whether or not they'll have home ice advantage or the Penguins will. Right now, I think it's looking pretty good for them to hold home ice, so which is good. We'll see, but having a guy like Mott out, an extended time shouldn't be like a major blow, but it's certainly not good news either. Austin Matthews is sitting out tonight for the game against the Islanders and the Maple Leafs. I'm not sure exactly. They didn't go into detail. They just said last night's game against Ottawa that there was something that had happened, and he's basically, it sounds like a minor tweak of some sort. and they're probably concerned that if he plays, it could get worse or be aggravated, as opposed to having a short break and hopefully being able to move past it, which is certainly smart this time of year. They're going to want him healthy and at his absolute best before they start their first round playoff series, because obviously this is another year where they're hoping to finally make it past the first round and see what kind of damage they can do. And of course, not having a healthy Matthews would be a big blow. So at this point, doesn't seem to be any reason for concern besides missing a game or two. So we'll see where that goes and what we find out further in the next few days. Of course, Matthews' good buddy and former teammate Freddie Andersen, goaltender now for the Carolina Hurricanes, did leave yesterday's game due to injury. Looked like when he kicked his leg out for a save that it just kind of fell awkwardly. I'm not sure if he caught a rut or what happened, but it just it wasn't real obvious watching the play. It obviously some sort of leg injury, but you just never know the full extent. He is being fully examined by Hurricanes doctors and trying to determine the full extent of the injury and timelines. We don't know any further updates as of right this moment on Freddie Andersen, but again, that could be a big blow for Carolina as to what they could do there. I know they also have Antti Ranta on the roster. Certainly capable goaltender, so they're not completely stuck, but I'm sure they would prefer to go with Freddie in game one of the playoffs, so I'm sure they're holding their breath right now, just like some other teams, like I mentioned here, like Tristan Jarry and the Penguins, kind of hoping that it's nothing too serious, nothing too long term. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL trade and free agent rumors. There's some big names in the free agent crop of players that are expected to be available this year. Not all will, maybe make it to free agency. Some may end up re-upping before they get there, which we'll talk about here a little bit further. But there's certainly an article in Sportsnet written by Rory Boylan talking about the potential contract and what it could look like for Flames star Johnny Gaudreau. And of course, he goes on to talk about the cap situation and what other deals they have to work on and how they could satisfy some cap situations and kind of save some money to make it a little more possible, because they not only have Gaudreau's contract, they have Matthew Tkachuk, they have Andrew Mangiapane, and a couple other smaller deals to look at as well. Of course, he, just to kind of make things simple, kind of went through Johnny Gaudreau. Really, there's some talk that, if he really wants to stay in Calgary and he's willing to help them out a little bit because of the cap situation, maybe he'd sign closer to $8 million a year. But to be honest, he's a career season. If you look at comparables around the league, you could compare him to a guy like Artemi Panarin, who's making well above that. There's certainly some other players that are, on some valuable contracts making a little less than that. So it's really hard to say where he falls. But to me, we can certainly command 9 for sure. I wouldn't even be shocking to see it get up higher than that. Maybe 9.25, 9.5. I don't know if it'll get all the way to 10, just because even on an open market, teams are going to be a little tighter than you might have seen a few years ago, just because of the flat salary cap and lost revenue that we've seen over the past couple of years due to the pandemic. Whereas, when some of these other contracts that we're comparing it to, things were a little bit different at that time. So it's likely going to end up having to be a little bit less. But still, they're going to have a tough time keeping the band together. The Flames have had a fantastic regular season. Of course, as we talked about when it comes to all these rumors, whether they're about trades or free agent movement, the playoffs and the players in the playoffs that we're talking about, their performance is going to have a major impact on what we see happen. Now, assuming the Flames have some success and they want to move forward here, then it's going to be a challenge. There's no doubt. I'm sure Matthew Tkachuk's contract is going to be beginning with at least a 9 as well. Mangiapane, you're looking at probably at least 5. I mean, the guy's got 30 goals, but he's not as much of an impact on the whole overall offensive picture as Tkachuk and Gaudreau. So you could probably get by with 5, 5.5, something like that. I know his agent had already was outspoken before earlier in the year, saying he'd recommend he take a short-term contract to get to free agency as quick as possible, and then maybe try to get a longer-term deal at that point when the cap situation is starting to improve. And that might be wise, but at the same time, players are just one injury away sometimes of having things fall apart or a bad season. I mean, look at some players have taken a 1-year, 2-year deal, hoping for that get hurt or have a down year, and then suddenly nobody wants to pay them that money anymore. So it's a tough balancing act to perform. There's no doubt. Now, of course, with all that in mind now, the main player that the article goes on to talk about that could help them free up some cap space with him departing the organization would be veteran center iceman Sean Monahan. Now, we know Monahan has had some real solid hockey seasons, but it's also fair to say the last few years his numbers have taken a big dip. His performance has suffered, and a lot of it has to do with injuries. He's had a lot of trouble with his hips and various injuries between upper body, lower body, but the hips being the worst of it. And to me, it's taken its major toll on him. I mean, Monahan's played hockey a long time. He obviously plays a real solid game. If you're not afraid to play physical. And it's taken its toll on him. There's no doubt about it. So certainly, if Monahan's contract, which doesn't have much term left on it, was able to be bought out or traded, it would certainly play a big role. The article goes on to suggest that a buyout would be the easiest solution. But to be honest, to be a buyout, you have to be healthy. And where Monahan was having late season-ending surgery, I don't know that he's going to be eligible for a buyout because I don't know if they can confirm that he's healthy enough for that. They may have to consider a trade with 50% retention, which to me, to be honest, might be better for the cap anyway, because, a buyout, he's got 1 year left. There will be a form of a cap hit over the next 2 years because it's, obviously a portion of the money over twice the period of time. So if they did a contract retention for the salary of 50% and trade it, then that would be easier. I mean, yeah, you might have a hard time moving Monahan, but for a team to take Monahan for 1 year at like 3-point-something million, that's not all that all that terrible. That's more reasonable. So, team like Arizona or other teams that need players. I mean, he does have a modified no trade, so we don't know who he'd block. But as much as I do agree with the article in the sense that Monahan moving would be a big help to help them keep Gaudreau and Tkachuk both if they're going to be commanding $9+ million, which is very realistic at this point. Playoff performance, will have an impact on that too. And if they have a real solid success, win a couple of rounds, it's just going to keep, putting their number up higher. So it's certainly going to make things very challenging, very difficult, and Monahan being traded would be the one of the ways that will make a big difference to free up some money. So either way, I don't see Monahan coming back. I'm just not sure that the buyout, as this article suggests, is going to be possible due to his potential health. Now, one update that came from the 32 Thoughts segment on Hockey Night in Canada Saturday night with Friedman and Marc talked about Filip Forsberg. The fact that we haven't heard a lot lately about contract negotiations, but apparently there have been a face-to-face meeting between his agent JP Barry and GM David Poyle. We don't have word, neither side would confirm if there was any progress made or what have you, any details, but the fact that they were meeting face-to-face, you have to take that as a positive. Generally, when you see teams and agents doing that, a lot of that is usually, okay, we need to meet up face-to-face. Let's just get some stuff hammered out here so we can get close to getting this signed. So that sounds very positive. You can't say that with certainty, of course, but generally when that happens, it's good news. And hopefully they're trending in the right direction. They're doing everything they can to keep Forsberg in a Predators uniform. Now, the Islanders, I want to talk about them again here as well, and the possibility of moving Semyon Varlamov in the offseason. I know athletic writer Kevin Kurz, who covers the Islanders, recently talked about this, saying how right now with Varlamov being out a little bit and Sorokin having a chance to run with the ball, might be a good opportunity for him to really show, because he's proven it time and time again. To me, he doesn't have to prove himself, but just to prove to the Islanders that he can certainly handle the starting role on his own and playing a high volume of games. And if the Islanders see that, they might be a little bit more willing to move Varlamov in the offseason. It's believed at this point that there's not really something that's high on the priority list for Lou Lamoriello, and that they're somewhat, fairly interested in bringing Varlamov back next year. So it's not a given, but if you look at the fact that that lineup certainly has a few holes that they need to address. They've had a lot better second half of the season. A lot of their veteran players have come around and responded, but there's still a few that probably could stand for a change of scenery, change things up. We know this team could use an extra scoring forward, another puck-moving defenseman. It's going to be tough to do, and they're going to need some cap space to do it as well. So as we've talked about before, moving a few players, maybe like a Bailey or a Beauvillier, might be a good option to get them some value to not only free up space, but bring in a player that will really help move the team forward. And then Varlamov moving might be the other piece they need to do. But of course, as we mentioned before, I think Varlamov was brought to the Islanders organization for a couple of reasons. One, he's a good goaltender, had good contract negotiations, so there was that. He shared an agent with Ilya Sorokin. Of course, they're both Russian, so he could help him get acclimated to North America and be a good teammate, good influence for him to be around to help him get situated. And I understand the importance of that, and that's something they deemed important to get Sorokin to make sure he'd stay long term. So there's no doubt that played a role, and I'm sure they're good friends, and that Sorokin would probably prefer to have Varlamov around. But at the same time, due to cap purposes, it would give them a lot more flexibility. So there's certainly some wondering there from Kerrs if Sorokin has a real strong finish to the season, playing the bulk of the games, if that might change their mind. So we'll see. It's certainly something that I think Lou needs to at least consider going into the offseason. Of course, the Vegas Golden Knights are reportedly expected to re-sign pending unrestricted free agent winger Riley Smith, who's still putting up pretty decent production this year. Of course, he's on LTIR right now. Certainly missed a fair bit of time. But, with the cap situation in Vegas, they are going to be way over the cap if you had everybody activated, right? So right now they have Stone in, Eichel's in, Pacioretty's in, but they have like 6 other players in LTIR to make the necessary space. So you have to wonder, if Riley Smith's not one of the players going, who is? Are they going to attempt to trade Dadonov again? But I mean, he's been pretty good for them too. That's a tough one there. Do they try to move William Karlsson? Doesn't seem like there's interest to do that. I haven't really heard his name in a rumor mill, but somebody's got to go. Like, they have way too much money here. When everybody's healthy in the offseason, when everything resets, there's just no way they can keep all these players in the mix. I had speculated my 4 now without having any kind of source to say that he would be a player to go. I honestly think Shea Theodore might be somebody we see shopped, and that would generate a ton of interest as well. But at this point, the whole goal of Vegas to sneak into the playoffs appears to be slipping away. And if this organization, for the first time in its history, has to face some real adversity for missing the playoffs and having all these players putting them over the cap and Riley Smith's not going, it just really boils down to the question of who is going to. Like I said, there's a few players here absolutely need to go. There's just no way around it, and we don't know who those players are going to be here just yet. If they're going to keep the pending unrestricted original Golden Knight in the mix. So we'll see. But right now, it's expected they're going to sign Smith. Of course, the other piece of business I want to talk about here today is Elliotte Friedman mentioning recently about Marc-Andre Fleury possibly heading back to Pittsburgh in the offseason. We know he's having a good time with the Wild so far, been a good fit since he came over from Chicago. Of course, there's the Bill Guerin connection, which, there reportedly is interest in maybe the Wild hanging on to Fleury for more than this year. But Friedman has mentioned a few times recently that he can see him heading back to Pittsburgh. But to me, Pittsburgh's got some super big questions to answer this offseason. They have a lot of unrestricted free agency to decide upon. They've got Evgeny Malkin, they've got Chris Letang, they've got Brian Rust, there's Evan Rodriguez, and are they going to make a change in goal? Is Fleury going to be somebody they want to bring in? There was reportedly a lot of interest this year between Pittsburgh and Chicago, but Chicago wanted too much for Fleury, and Pittsburgh decided it was not something they could afford to spend, and they were going to stick with what they had. But ultimately, the offseason is going to be a new time here. If all these top players don't come back, which we don't know yet, it should be real interesting to see what Fleury would do. I honestly think there would be interest on both sides to have Fleury come back and finish up with Pittsburgh on a short-term contract. But time will tell if he has a real solid run with Minnesota, and Minnesota decides they really want to take a run to keeping him. I think he'll listen to Bill Guerin and give him a shot to make it happen. That is all your news and rumors for today. Let me know your thoughts and everything else discussed here down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.